What happens when the most powerful beings in the galaxy discover they've been playing chess while humanity was building rockets? For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council ruled with absolute authority over 47 star systems and countless civilizations. Their word was law. Their technology was supreme. Their patience with primitive species was legendary. Then humanity said no thank you and walked away. Not with violence, not with rebellion, not with the desperate fury of the oppressed. They simply packed up their entire civilization and left. By the time the Council realized what humanity had been quietly building in the shadows of their own arrogance, Earth's children were already beyond the reach of galactic law, galactic weapons, and galactic comprehension. This is the story of the day the galaxy's masters learned they had never truly understood the species they thought they could control forever. This is the story of humanity's final gift to their former overlords. The terrifying realization that sometimes the most dangerous thing a species can do is simply leave.
The morning that changed everything began like any other in the celestial chambers of the Galactic Council.
High Counselor Zeth Kara of the Vorthani Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes and settled into his floating throne, a masterpiece of gravitic engineering that had taken his homeworld's finest artisans 3 centuries to complete. Around him, the other 11 High Counselors took their positions in the vast circular chamber that hung suspended in the void between stars, its transparent walls offering a breathtaking view of the galaxy they ruled. Counselor Mirathes of the Ethereal Collective began the session with the traditional words that had opened every council meeting for the past 3 millennia. Her voice, carried by quantum resonance fields, reached every corner of the chamber and simultaneously transmitted to the 47 member worlds. By the ancient laws and the wisdom of ages, we gather to guide the destiny of all sapient life within our domain. The first matter of business was routine. Trade disputes between the Crystalline Confederacy and the Hive worlds over mining rights in the Andorian Nebula. Then came reports on the latest technological achievements of various member species, followed by updates on the terraforming projects in the Outer Rim territories. Everything proceeded with the measured dignity that had characterized council sessions for countless generations. It was during the routine planetary status reports that junior attaché Vex Nali, a young Hegemony citizen serving his mandatory civil service term, noticed something peculiar in the data streams flowing across his workstation. He was responsible for monitoring the 137 non-member species within Council territory, the civilizations deemed too primitive or troublesome to warrant full membership, but important enough to require oversight. Earth, home to the humans, was listed among these species. They had been under Council observation for just over 800 years, ever since they had achieved nuclear fission and begun broadcasting radio signals into space. The humans were classified as a Category 5 civilization, technologically promising but culturally volatile, with a disturbing tendency toward individualism and a concerning resistance to centralized authority. Vaxnali frowned as he reviewed the latest surveillance reports from the Sol system. The automated monitoring stations that ringed human space had been reporting steadily decreasing activity levels over the past several months. At first, this had been attributed to normal fluctuations in human industrial output. The species was known for its economic cycles and periodic conflicts after all. But as Vex Nali dug deeper into the data, a troubling pattern emerged. The decrease wasn't random or cyclical, it was systematic, comprehensive, and accelerating. Human electromagnetic emissions were down by 47% from their peak levels just 2 years earlier. Orbital traffic around Earth had dropped by 62%. Most disturbing of all, the thermal signatures from major human population centers had diminished significantly. The young Atate's training kicked in. This kind of decline typically indicated one of 3 scenarios: a catastrophic plague, a devastating war, or societal collapse. Any of these would require immediate council intervention, as per the Galactic Protection Protocols established after the tragic extinction of the Zephyrian civilization 3 centuries earlier. Vex Nali initiated a priority communication with the Deep Space Monitoring Station designated Watchtower 7, positioned just beyond the heliopause of the Sol system. The response that came back left him staring at his screen in disbelief. Commander Yolana of the station's Krolex crew appeared on his display, her 6 eyes reflecting the same confusion that Vex Nali felt. Attaché, we've been trying to understand this ourselves for weeks. The human settlements on their moon, Mars, and various asteroid colonies have gone completely dark. Not destroyed, mind you. Just empty. Empty? What do you mean empty? I mean there's nobody there. The structures remain intact, but there are no life signs, no energy signatures beyond basic environmental systems. It's as if the humans simply packed up and left. Vexnali's academic mind raced through the possibilities. Mass evacuation could indicate an impending natural disaster that human science had detected, but council sensors had missed. Have you detected any incoming asteroids? Solar instabilities? Anything that might prompt a planetary evacuation? Nothing, attaché. The Sol system is completely stable. We've run every scan we can think of. There's no apparent threat that would justify abandoning established colonies. The conversation was interrupted by an automated alert that flashed across Vexnali's workstation. 3 more monitoring stations, positioned at different points around human space, were reporting similar anomalies. Entire human settlements were going offline, with no distress signals, no signs of conflict, no indication of disaster. As the reality of the situation began to dawn on him, Vexnali accessed the classified files on human psychology and behavior patterns. What he found there made his blood run cold. Humans, according to the Council's xenopsychologists, possessed an unusual trait among sapient species. When faced with impossible situations, they didn't typically surrender or seek accommodation. They adapted. They found alternatives. They sometimes chose options that other species would consider unthinkable. With growing urgency, Vexnali began cross-referencing the missing human populations with the species' recent technological developments. The humans had always been remarkably inventive, but their progress had accelerated dramatically over the past century. They had achieved nuclear fusion, developed primitive but functional faster-than-light communication, and had even begun experimenting with rudimentary space-folding technology. The pieces of a terrifying puzzle began falling into place. The humans hadn't been destroyed or evacuated. They had been preparing. The reduced electromagnetic emissions weren't signs of decline. They were evidence of a civilization deliberately reducing its detectable footprint. The empty colonies weren't abandoned. They were stripped clean of everything valuable and portable. Humanity wasn't dying. They were leaving. Vexnali's hands trembled as he initiated an emergency communication with High Counselor Zefkara's office. This was far beyond his authority to handle, but the implications were staggering. If the humans were indeed preparing to depart the Sol system, it would represent the first time in recorded galactic history that a species had chosen to leave Council territory rather than seek membership or accept permanent non-member status. The High Counselor's aide, a severe-looking Vorthani named Kelmoth, appeared on Vexnali's screen. Junior Attaché, this had better be genuinely urgent. The High Counselor is in session. Sir, I believe it is. I need to speak with the High Counselor immediately about the human situation in the Sol system. I have reason to believe they're preparing to abandon their star system entirely. Krelmoth's expression shifted from annoyance to skepticism to concern, as Vexnali quickly outlined his findings. Within minutes, the young attaché found himself standing in an antechamber adjacent to the main council floor, watching through a viewing portal as Krelmoth whispered urgently in High Counselor Zethkara's ear. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The High Counselor's normally composed demeanor cracked, his reptilian features twisting into an expression of disbelief and alarm. He called for an immediate recess and requested that all High Counselors convene in emergency session within the hour. As word of the human situation spread through the council hierarchy, the response was swift and decisive. Admiral Kothvar of the Hegemony Defense Fleet was summoned to provide a military assessment. Dr. Elunara, the council's chief xenobiologist, was asked to analyze the psychological implications. Most importantly, Ambassador Jenth Kayla, who had been serving as the unofficial human liaison for the past 50 years, was ordered to establish immediate contact with Earth's leadership. The emergency session that followed would later be remembered as one of the most chaotic in Council history. For 3,000 years, the Council had dealt with rebellions, wars, technological disasters, and every conceivable form of crisis. But they had never faced the simple, quiet departure of an entire civilization. High Counselor Zethkara called the session to order with unusual haste. Fellow councillors, we face an unprecedented situation. The human species appears to be evacuating their entire solar system without any prior communication with this council. Junior Attaché Vexnali will present his findings. As Vexnali nervously outlined the evidence, the council chamber filled with murmurs of disbelief and concern. Councillor Mirathus was the first to speak when the presentation concluded. This is impossible. No species simply abandons their homeworld. There must be some explanation we're missing. Perhaps they're responding to a threat we haven't detected, suggested Councillor Drakheim of the warrior clans. Their primitive sensors might have detected something ours missed. But Dr. Elunara shook her head, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights. I've studied human psychology extensively. This behavior is consistent with their historical patterns, but on an unprecedented scale. When humans perceive a situation as intolerable, they don't negotiate or surrender. They leave. They've done it throughout their history on a tribal and national level. It appears they're now doing it as a species. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. Admiral Kothvar was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. If the humans are leaving Council space entirely, it means they've developed technology we didn't know they possessed. No species could evacuate an entire star system without advanced transportation capabilities. Ambassador Jenth Keeler, participating via quantum communication from Earth orbit, provided the most disturbing news of all. Hi, Councillors. I've been attempting to contact human leadership for the past 6 hours. Every major government, every significant leader, every important institution has stopped responding to our communications. It's as if the entire human command structure has simply vanished. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Galactic Council faced a situation they had never anticipated and had no protocols to address. They had planned for rebellion, for war, for natural disasters, for technological catastrophes. But they had never imagined that a species might simply choose to walk away from everything they knew rather than accept the Council's authority. As the session continued late into the night, one fact became increasingly clear. Humanity's departure wasn't just a logistical challenge or a diplomatic crisis. It was a fundamental challenge to everything the Council believed about governance, authority, and the natural order of galactic civilization. High Councillor Zeth Kara finally adjourned the session with orders that would mobilize the largest investigation in Council history. Every available resource would be dedicated to understanding how humanity had developed the technology for system-wide evacuation, where they were planning to go, and most importantly, how they had done all of this without the Council's knowledge or permission. But as the councillors departed for their quarters, many carried with them a deeply unsettling realization. If humanity could disappear despite constant surveillance, if they could develop advanced technology without detection, if they could coordinate a species-wide evacuation without any apparent central authority, then perhaps the Council's understanding of their own dominion was far more limited than they had ever imagined. The galaxy's rulers had just encountered their first truly unsolvable problem, a species that refused to be ruled and possessed the capability to make that refusal meaningful. And somewhere in the dark, between the stars, humanity was already gone. Admiral Kothvar had commanded the 3rd Galactic Defense Fleet for over 2 centuries, and in that time he had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the discovery of new worlds, and the enforcement of Council law across vast stretches of space. But as his flagship, the intimidating dreadnought Eternal Dominion, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, he found himself facing something entirely unprecedented in his military career. The system was still there. The star burned with its familiar yellow light. The planets maintained their ancient orbits, and the various asteroids and comets followed their predictable paths through the void. But something fundamental had changed. The Sol system felt hollow, like a magnificent theater, after the audience had departed. "Admiral," reported Commander Ythsera from her position at the sensor station, "I'm reading massive structural changes throughout the system. Whatever the humans did here, they did it on a scale we've never seen before." Kothvar studied the tactical display that dominated his command bridge. The familiar layout of human civilization was gone. Where Earth's moon had once hosted the sprawling lunar city complex, only empty tunnels and abandoned infrastructure remained. Mars, which had supported nearly 10 million humans across its various domed cities, now showed nothing but hollow shells and silent machinery. "Take us to Earth orbit," Kothvar ordered. "I want to see their homeworld for myself." As the Eternal Dominion approached the blue-green planet that had given birth to humanity, the scope of what had transpired became increasingly clear. Earth itself remained beautiful and vibrant, its cities still standing, its lights still glowing in the darkness of night. But the orbital infrastructure that had surrounded the planet like a mechanical crown was gone. The massive space elevators that had connected the surface to orbital manufacturing stations were missing. The asteroid processing facilities that had orbited at the system's edge had vanished without a trace. Eleonara, who had joined the expedition at the Council's request, worked frantically at a bank of analysis computers. Her crystalline fingers moved with inhuman speed as she processed the data streaming in from the fleet's sensors. "Admiral, the scale of this evacuation is beyond anything in recorded history. Based on the missing infrastructure and the void patterns in space, I estimate that the humans removed approximately 97% of their mobile civilization. What about the planet itself? Kothvar asked. Still inhabited, but at drastically reduced levels. I'm detecting perhaps 50 million humans remaining on Earth, concentrated primarily in rural areas and smaller settlements. The major cities show signs of recent massive depopulation. Ambassador Jenth Kayla materialized on the bridge via holographic projection, his usual diplomatic composure replaced by barely contained frustration. Admiral, I've established contact with the remaining human leadership. They're willing to meet with us, but their responses to our questions have been evasive. Evasive how? They claim they don't know where the rest of their species went. They insist that the departure was voluntary and coordinated by something they call the Exodus Collective, but they maintain that they were never part of that organization and have no information about its plans or destinations. Kothvar's tactical mind immediately recognized the pattern. They're compartmentalizing information. Classic intelligence technique. The humans who remained know only what they need to know, while the humans who left took all the crucial details with them. The Admiral ordered his fleet to conduct a comprehensive survey of the entire Sol system while he prepared for a direct meeting with Earth's remaining leadership. If the humans wanted to play intelligence games, they would discover that the Galactic Council had been perfecting such techniques for millennia. The meeting took place in what had once been the United Nations headquarters in New York, though the building now served primarily as a museum and cultural center for the drastically reduced population. Secretary General Maria Santos, one of the few high-ranking officials who had chosen to remain on Earth, greeted the Council delegation with a mixture of courtesy and carefully controlled defiance. Ambassador Gent Keller, Admiral Kothvar, she said, her voice steady despite the obvious tension. Welcome to Earth. I apologize for the circumstances of your visit. Secretary General Santos, Gent Keeler replied, perhaps you could explain to us exactly what those circumstances are. The Galactic Council is deeply concerned about the sudden disappearance of the majority of your species. Santos gestured to the nearly empty assembly hall around them. As you can see, Ambassador, humanity has made some difficult choices. Many of our people decided that Earth's future lay elsewhere. Where is elsewhere? Admiral Kothvar interjected, his patience already wearing thin. Our senses indicate that your species has developed technology far beyond what our observations suggested. We need to understand how this was accomplished and where your people have gone. The Secretary General's expression hardened slightly. Admiral, with all due respect, I don't believe those are questions that humanity is obligated to answer. We were never members of your Galactic Council. We never agreed to submit to your authority. We were simply observed and catalogued without our consent. Dr. Eleonara stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. Secretary General, you must understand the implications of what your species has done. No civilization in recorded history has ever successfully coordinated an exodus of this magnitude. The logistics alone should have been impossible with your technology level. Santos smiled, and for the first time, Kothvar detected a hint of pride in her expression. Dr. Eleonara, I think your assessment of our technology level may have been incomplete.
What do you mean?
I mean that humanity has been developing in directions that your surveillance apparently missed. While you were watching our public governments and monitoring our official communications, other elements of our society were pursuing entirely different paths. Ambassador Jenth Keller leaned forward intently. Are you saying that there were secret human organizations that the Council was unaware of? I'm saying that humanity learned a long time ago that survival sometimes requires keeping your most important capabilities hidden from those who might seek to control them. The implications of this statement sent a chill through the Council delegation. For 800 years, they had believed they understood humanity's technological and social development. They had observed human wars, monitored human scientific breakthroughs, and tracked human expansion throughout their solar system. But apparently, they had been watching only the surface layer of human civilization. Admiral Kothvar's military instincts kicked into high gear. Secretary General, I need you to understand something. The Galactic Council has maintained order in this galaxy for 3,000 years. We have protocols for dealing with every conceivable situation. If humanity has developed advanced technology without our knowledge, that represents a potential threat to galactic stability. A threat to your control, you mean? Santos replied calmly. Admiral, let me ask you a question. In all your centuries of maintaining galactic order, have you ever encountered a species that simply wanted to be left alone? Species that resist Council authority are dealt with according to established protocols. Kothvar said stiffly. And those protocols involve submission or destruction, don't they? Santos continued. You've never had to deal with a species that chose a third option, departure. Ilunara had been quietly analyzing data throughout this exchange, and now she looked up from her instruments with an expression of growing alarm. Admiral, I'm detecting some very disturbing patterns in the sensor data from our system survey.
What kind of patterns? The kind that suggests the humans didn't just pack up and leave?
They altered fundamental aspects of this star system on their way out. Kothvar turned to face the scientist fully. Explain. The missing infrastructure I mentioned earlier wasn't just removed. It was absorbed. The humans appear to have developed some form of matter conversion technology that allowed them to transform entire stations and ships into raw materials for their Exodus fleet. Secretary General Santos watched this exchange with interest, but offered no comment. Furthermore, Dr. Ilunara continued, there are gravitational anomalies throughout the system that suggest the humans were manipulating space-time itself during their departure. Admiral, I don't think they left using conventional faster-than-light travel. I think they folded space. The silence that followed this revelation was profound. Space folding technology was theoretical even for the most advanced council species. The energy requirements alone should have been impossible for a civilization that had barely achieved interstellar capability. Ambassador Gent Keller finally broke the silence. Secretary General, how long has your species possessed space folding capability? Ambassador, you're asking me to confirm information I never claimed we possessed. The evidence is clear, Dr. Ilunara interjected. The gravitational signatures are unmistakable. Santos stood and walked to a window overlooking the Hudson River. Ilunara, let me tell you something about humanity that your observations may have missed. We're very good at working together when we need to be. We're also very good at keeping secrets when our survival depends on it. Are you saying that your entire species participated in a conspiracy to hide advanced technology from council surveillance? Kothvar demanded. I'm saying that when a species faces the choice between submission and freedom, they sometimes discover capabilities they never knew they had. The Admiral's frustration was reaching dangerous levels. Secretary General, you need to understand that the Council cannot simply allow an advanced civilization to disappear into unknown space. The potential for future conflict is too great. Admiral, Santos replied, turning back to face the delegation. You need to understand that the choice has already been made. The majority of humanity is gone, and they're not coming back. The question now is whether you want to maintain peaceful relations with those of us who remained, or whether you intend to treat Earth as a hostile territory. Ilunara looked up from her instruments again, her crystalline features reflecting deep concern. Admiral, there's something else. I'm detecting residual energy patterns that suggest the humans left behind more than just empty buildings. There are devices throughout this system that are still active, still monitoring, still waiting. Waiting. For what? I don't know. But whatever the humans were planning, I don't think their departure was the end of it. I think it was the beginning. Admiral Kothvar felt the weight of 3,000 years of galactic precedent bearing down on him. The Council had protocols for dealing with rebellious species, with primitive civilizations, with natural disasters, and with technological catastrophes. But they had no protocols for dealing with a species that had quietly developed advanced technology, coordinated a massive exodus in secret, and left behind a star system full of monitoring devices and unanswered questions. As his flagship prepared to return to Council space with its disturbing cargo of incomplete answers and troubling implications, Kothvar realized that humanity had done something far more dangerous than rebel against Council authority. They had proven that Council authority had limits. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, the rest of humanity was learning just how far beyond those limits they could go. The emergency session of the full Galactic Council had been in continuous operation for 72 hours, and High Councillor Zethkara could feel the strain wearing on everyone present. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 47-member worlds struggled to comprehend reports that challenged everything they believed about galactic civilization and their own supremacy within it. Dr. Ilunara stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing the disturbing data collected from the Sol system. Her normally steady voice carried an undertone of scientific excitement mixed with deep concern. Honorable Councillors, what we discovered in human space forces us to reconsider our fundamental understanding of technological development and species capability assessment. She gestured to a three-dimensional map of the Sol system, highlighting areas where gravitational anomalies had been detected. The humans didn't simply pack up and leave using conventional transport. They folded space-time itself, creating temporary shortcuts that allowed them to move massive amounts of matter and energy to destinations beyond our ability to track. Counselor Vragteen of the Silicon Collective raised a mechanical appendage. Dr. Ilunara, space-folding technology requires massive energy generation capabilities. Our monitoring stations showed no evidence of the infrastructure necessary for such power production. That's precisely the point, Counselor. The humans appear to have developed miniaturized, highly efficient energy systems that operated below our detection thresholds. While we were monitoring their crude fusion reactors and primitive solar collection systems, they were perfecting technology that makes our own power generation look archaic.
A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber.
Counselor Mirathus of the Ethereal Collective spoke for many when she said, "This is impossible. Our surveillance systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. No species could develop such technology without our knowledge." Ambassador Jenth Kaela's voice crackled through the quantum communication link from his position in Earth orbit. "Counselors, I believe the humans would disagree with that assessment. During my interviews with their remaining leadership, I've learned that human society operates on multiple levels simultaneously, while their surface governments and public institutions followed predictable patterns that our surveillance could easily monitor. Their real technological development was conducted by what they call distributed research networks." "Explain," High Counselor Zethkara demanded. "Instead of centralizing their most advanced research in easily monitored government facilities, the humans dispersed it across thousands of small, independent groups. Each group worked on individual components of larger projects, often without knowing how their work fit into the bigger picture. When breakthroughs were achieved, the information was shared through encrypted networks that our monitoring systems interpreted as routine internet traffic." Dr. Eleonara nodded grimly. "It's actually quite brilliant from a security perspective. By distributing the work and keeping the integration classified at the highest levels, they ensured that even if we detected individual research projects, we would never understand the larger technological capabilities they were developing." Admiral Kothvar, participating via hologram from his flagship still in the Sol system, added his own disturbing observations. "Counselors, the human deception goes far deeper than hidden research networks. They've been deliberately feeding us false information about their capabilities for decades." "False information?" Counselor Drakheim of the warrior clans leaned forward aggressively. "Are you suggesting they were actively conducting espionage operations against Council surveillance?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting. The humans we interviewed admitted that they've been aware of our monitoring stations for over a century. Rather than attempt to disable them, they chose to use them to their advantage. They fed our systems carefully crafted data designed to make us believe they were developing along predictable lines while they pursued entirely different technological paths."
The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber.
For 800 years, the Council had believed they possessed complete intelligence about human development. The discovery that they had been manipulated and deceived on such a scale was unprecedented in galactic history. Counselor Yefmara of the Hive World spoke with the collective voice of her trillion constituents. If the humans possessed such advanced deception capabilities, why did they choose to leave rather than seek Council membership? "Advanced civilizations are always welcome in our community." Secretary General Santos, appearing via hologram from Earth, had been invited to address the Council directly. Her response to this question would be remembered as one of the most significant diplomatic statements in galactic history. "Counselor Yethmara, humanity chose to leave because we studied your council very carefully for several centuries, and we didn't like what we learned." High Counselor Zethkara's voice was dangerously quiet when he responded. "Secretary General, please explain that statement."
Honorable Counselors, when humanity first detected signs of your galactic civilization, we were excited by the possibility of joining a larger community of intelligent species.
"We monitored your communications, studied your history, and analyzed your social structures. What we found troubled us deeply." Santos paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Your council has maintained order through a combination of technological superiority and the implicit threat of force. Species that join your community prosper, but they also surrender their independence. Species that resist your authority are either subjugated or destroyed. In 3,000 years, no member species has ever left the Council voluntarily. Because membership in the Council provides benefits that make departure undesirable," Councillor Mirathus interjected. "Or because departure is made impossible through technological dependence and economic integration," Santos replied calmly. "Councillors, we studied the histories of every species in your community. In every case, membership in the Council resulted in the gradual erosion of cultural independence and the integration into a larger collective identity dominated by the oldest and most powerful member species. Dr. Eleonora looked up from her data analysis with a startled expression. Secretary General, are you saying that humanity rejected Council membership as a form of cultural imperialism? I'm saying that humanity chose freedom over security, independence over prosperity, and uncertainty over submission. We realized that joining your council would mean becoming junior partners in a civilization we had no role in creating and would have limited influence in shaping. The anger in Admiral Kothvar's voice was unmistakable. So instead of seeking accommodation within the existing galactic order, humanity chose to simply ignore it entirely.
We chose to find our own path, Santos corrected.
Humanity has always believed that the universe is large enough for multiple approaches to civilization and technology. We saw no reason why we should abandon our own cultural development to become copies of species that achieved spaceflight millennia ago. High Counselor Zeth Kara struggled to maintain his diplomatic composure. Secretary General, you speak as if the Council is some form of oppressive regime. We have brought peace, prosperity, and stability to 47 star systems. You have brought your version of peace, prosperity, and stability, Santos replied. But you've also eliminated the possibility of alternative approaches. Every member species eventually adopts Council technology, Council social structures, and Council values. Diversity of thought and culture gradually disappears in favor of standardization and efficiency. Councillor Vrakteen's mechanical voice carried a note of genuine confusion. But standardization and efficiency are beneficial. They eliminate conflict and waste. They also eliminate innovation and growth. Councillor, humanity studied your technological development over the past 1,000 years. It has been largely stagnant. Your great achievements were accomplished millennia ago, and since then you've focused on refinement and optimization rather than breakthrough discoveries. Dr. Eleonora's scientific curiosity overcame diplomatic protocol. Secretary General, are you suggesting that Council membership actually inhibits technological advancement? I'm suggesting that when a civilization becomes too comfortable with its existing capabilities, it stops pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Humanity chose a different path because we believed that discomfort and uncertainty are necessary drivers of progress. The chamber erupted in heated discussion as councillors debated the implications of Santos's statements. Some were offended by the suggestion that Council civilization was stagnant. Others were intrigued by the possibility that humanity's departure might represent a form of intellectual evolution. All were troubled by the realization that their authority had been rejected not through rebellion or ignorance, but through careful analysis and deliberate choice. Ambassador Jenthkelar's voice cut through the debate. Councillors, there's another aspect of this situation that we need to address. The humans who remained on Earth have made it clear that they maintain communication with those who departed. They know where their people went, and they know what they're doing, and they refuse to share that information, Admiral Kothvar added grimly. Secretary General Santos nodded. The location and activities of the Exodus Collective are not secrets we're prepared to reveal. But I can tell you this. Humanity's departure from Council space was not the end of our civilization's development. It was the beginning of a new phase of human evolution. What kind of evolution? High Counselor Zethkara demanded. The kind that's only possible when a species is free to pursue its own destiny without external constraints or predetermined limitations. Dr. Eleonora looked up from her instruments with an expression of growing alarm. Councillors, I'm receiving data from our deep space monitoring network. There are gravitational anomalies being detected at multiple points along the galactic rim. Something large is moving out there, something that's affecting the fabric of space-time itself. The chamber fell silent as the implications of this news sank in. Admiral Kothvar's voice was tense when he spoke. How large? Large enough to suggest that the human Exodus fleet wasn't just leaving Council space. They were heading somewhere specific, and they've been modifying reality along the way to accomplish their goals. Secretary General Santos smiled slightly, and for the first time the Council delegates saw something in her expression that made them deeply uncomfortable. It was the look of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. Councillors, she said quietly, I think you're beginning to understand that humanity's departure wasn't just about leaving your authority. It was about proving that your authority has limits. And what lies beyond those limits? High Counselor Zethkara asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. That, Honourable Councillor, is what the rest of humanity intends to find out. As the session continued into its fourth day, one fact became increasingly clear to everyone present. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. Humanity had not simply left. They had evolved beyond the need for galactic civilization as it currently existed. And they were not finished with their evolution. 6 months after humanity's departure from Council space, the galaxy had begun to change in ways that no amount of Council planning or protocol could address. High Councillor Zathara stood in his private chamber aboard the Council's mobile headquarters, staring out at a star map that showed disturbing new developments across multiple sectors. Red markers indicated gravitational anomalies that defied conventional physics. Blue markers showed the locations where Council monitoring stations had gone offline without explanation. Green markers represented the most troubling development of all: star systems where non-member species had suddenly begun exhibiting technological capabilities far beyond their previously observed levels. Dr. Ilunara materialized via hologram beside him, her crystalline features reflecting the star map's glow. High Counselor, we've confirmed 17 separate incidents in the past month alone. Species that we classified as pre-industrial have begun broadcasting advanced electromagnetic signatures. 2 civilizations that had barely achieved spaceflight are now showing evidence of faster-than-light capability. And you believe these developments are connected to humanity's departure? The correlation is undeniable. Every one of these technological leaps occurred in star systems along the projected path of the human Exodus fleet. Furthermore, we've detected quantum communication signatures that match the encryption patterns used by human networks. Zathkara felt a chill of understanding. The humans aren't just running away. They're recruiting. It appears so. Somehow, they're making contact with primitive species and sharing advanced technology with them. But High Council, the implications go far beyond simple technology transfer. These species are exhibiting capabilities that even our most advanced members don't possess. The High Council activated his personal communication system and initiated an emergency conference with the other senior councillors. Within minutes, the holographic forms of his colleagues appeared around him, their expressions reflecting the same mixture of concern and confusion that plagued his own thoughts. Admiral Kothvar's image flickered with interference from his position in deep space. Councillors, the situation is deteriorating rapidly. My fleet has encountered 3 separate incidents where Council authority has been directly challenged by species we thought were firmly under our control.
What kind of challenges?
Councillor Miratus asked. The Altarian Republic has declared independence from Council oversight and is demanding that all monitoring stations be removed from their space. The Kepler Collective has announced that they're withdrawing from the Galactic Trade Network and establishing their own economic system. Most disturbing of all, the Centauri Federation has begun constructing what appears to be a massive defensive array around their primary star. Councillor Drakheim of the warrior clans leaned forward aggressively. Then we enforce compliance, we've done it before. With what? Admiral Kothvar replied grimly. Councillor, I sent a squadron to the Altarian system to investigate their independence declaration. They were met by defensive systems that shouldn't exist. Technology that made our warships look like primitive orbital fighters. Ilunara shared her sensor data with the group, and the readings that appeared in their shared tactical display sent shockwaves through the assembled leadership. The defensive systems Admiral Kothvar encountered weren't just advanced. They were beyond advanced. Energy manipulation at the quantum level, gravitational field generators that could create artificial black holes, and defensive screens that appeared to operate by folding space-time itself.
That's impossible, Councillor Vraktine protested. No species could develop such technology independently.
The energy requirements alone would be staggering. Unless they weren't developing it independently, Zethkara said quietly. Unless they were receiving assistance from a species that had already solved those problems. Ambassador Jenth Keller's voice joined the conference from his position in the Sol system. Councillors, I've been monitoring human communications on Earth, and what I'm hearing confirms your worst fears. The humans who remained are in regular contact with what they call the Liberation Network. It's not just an Exodus fleet, it's a revolutionary movement designed to free species from Council authority. The silence that followed this revelation was profound. For 3,000 years, the Council had been the unchallenged authority in galactic affairs. The idea that their rule could be systematically undermined by a species they had dismissed as primitive was almost incomprehensible. Councillor Yethmara spoke with the combined voice of her trillion constituents. Ambassador, what are the humans hoping to accomplish? Do they intend to replace our authority with their own?
No. Counselor.
That's what makes this so dangerous. They don't want to rule the galaxy. They want to free it. Their goal appears to be the complete dissolution of centralized galactic authority in favor of independent, technologically advanced civilizations that cooperate by choice rather than compulsion. Admiral Kothvar's image flickered with static as his ship encountered another gravitational anomaly. Counselors, we need to understand that we're not facing a traditional rebellion. The humans aren't trying to conquer us or destroy us, they're trying to make us irrelevant. By giving advanced technology to primitive species? Counselor Mirithess asked. By proving that primitive species aren't actually primitive, Dr. Byrey. Eleonora corrected. My analysis of the technological developments we're observing suggests that many of these species possessed far greater potential than our assessments indicated. The humans appear to have developed techniques for accelerating natural technological evolution rather than simply sharing their own discoveries. Zethkara struggled to process the implications. Are you saying that our entire system of species classification and development monitoring has been fundamentally flawed? I'm saying that our system was based on the assumption that technological development follows predictable patterns that can be monitored and controlled. The humans have discovered ways to bypass those patterns entirely. The conference was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Council's Central Intelligence Division. Director Karthos appeared via emergency hologram, his usually composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. Hi, Counselor, we have a crisis. Long-range sensors are detecting massive movements throughout the galactic rim. Entire star systems are going dark, not destroyed, but hidden behind some form of cloaking technology we don't understand. Whatever the humans are doing out there, it's happening on a scale that dwarfs their original exodus. How many systems? Zethkara asked, though he dreaded the answer. At least 40, possibly more. High Counselor, if this continues, we could be looking at the emergence of an entire shadow civilization operating beyond our ability to monitor or control. Elunara's scientific mind was racing through the possibilities. Director Kael'thas, are these systems being cloaked individually, or is there evidence of some larger pattern?
There's definitely a pattern.
The affected systems form a rough sphere centered on the galactic rim, and the sphere is expanding. But more troubling, we're detecting quantum communication networks connecting these systems that operate on principles we don't understand. Admiral Kothwar's voice carried a note of professional respect mixed with fear. They're building an empire, but not like any empire in galactic history. Instead of conquering territory and subjugating populations, they're creating willing allies by making them stronger than their former rulers. The truth of this statement hit the assembled councillors like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't just rejected council authority, they had developed a systematic method for undermining it throughout the galaxy. By sharing advanced technology with species that had previously been dependent on council protection and guidance, they were eliminating the foundation upon which 3,000 years of galactic civilization had been built. Ambassador Jenth Keller's voice carried disturbing news from Earth. Councillors, I've received a message from Secretary General Santos. She's requesting a formal meeting to discuss what she calls the new galactic reality. What new galactic reality? Councillor Drakheim demanded. The reality in which the Council's authority is no longer recognized by a growing number of star systems. She's offering to serve as a mediator between the Council and what she calls the Free Worlds Alliance. Zethkara felt the weight of history pressing down upon him. Ambassador, arrange the meeting. We need to understand what we're truly facing. The meeting took place 3 days later in the same United Nations building where Santos had first revealed the scope of humanity's deception. But this time, she was not alone. Holographic representatives from dozens of species appeared around the conference table, many of whom the Council had never seen before. Santos began the session with words that would echo through galactic history. Honorable Councillors, I want to thank you for accepting our invitation to discuss the future of galactic civilization. I know the situation is unprecedented, and I understand that it challenges many of your fundamental assumptions about authority and order.
High Counselor Zethkara struggled to maintain his diplomatic composure. Secretary General Santos, what exactly are you proposing?
We're proposing a new model for galactic civilization, one based on voluntary cooperation between independent worlds, rather than submission to centralized authority.
The species you see represented here have all chosen to join what we call the Free Worlds Alliance. Dr. Eleonora leaned forward intently. Secretary General, these species are exhibiting technological capabilities that should be impossible given their previous development levels. How did they achieve such rapid advancement? One of the holographic representatives, a being that appeared to be composed of living energy, responded in a voice that resonated with harmonics. The Council's translation system struggled to process. Doctor, Your question assumes that our previous development levels were accurately assessed by your monitoring systems. Like humanity, many of us had been developing capabilities that your surveillance methods were unable to detect. Admiral Kothvar's military instincts were screaming warnings. Are you saying that multiple species throughout the galaxy have been secretly developing advanced technology while appearing primitive to our observers? We're saying that your definition of primitive may have been somewhat limited, Santos replied. The universe is full of different approaches to technology and civilization. The Council's methods work well for the species that develop them, but they're not the only possible paths to advancement.
Councillor Mirathis spoke with growing alarm.
Secretary General, if what you're suggesting is true, then the Council's entire understanding of galactic civilization is fundamentally flawed. Not flawed, Santos corrected. Limited. The Council represents one very successful approach to organizing galactic society, but it's not the only approach, and it's not necessarily the best approach for every species. The energy being spoke again, its harmonics creating strange resonances in the chamber's acoustic systems. Councillors, we do not seek conflict with your alliance of worlds. But we will no longer accept the assumption that your way of life represents the natural evolution of all intelligent species. Zeth Kara felt the foundations of 3 millennia of galactic order crumbling beneath him. What you're proposing is chaos. Without central coordination, without shared standards and protocols, galactic civilization will fragment into countless competing factions. Or it will evolve into something greater than any single faction could achieve alone, Santos replied. High Counselor, humanity's analysis of galactic history suggests that the Council's greatest achievement wasn't creating order out of chaos. It was preventing the natural evolution of diversity into something that transcended the limitations of any single approach to civilization. Dr. Iluanara looked up from her instruments with an expression of scientific awe. Counselors, the quantum communication networks connecting these free worlds are operating on principles that make our most advanced technology look primitive. If these species are sharing knowledge and resources freely rather than competing for dominance, they may be achieving a form of collective intelligence that exceeds anything in recorded history. The implications of this possibility sent shockwaves through the Council delegation. They were not just facing a political revolution or a technological breakthrough. They were witnessing the emergence of an entirely new form of galactic civilization that operated on principles they had never considered. Secretary General Santos concluded the meeting with a statement that would haunt the Council's dreams for years to come. Honorable Councillors, humanity bears no ill will toward the worlds that choose to remain within your alliance. But we will not tolerate any attempts to force the free worlds back under your authority. The age of galactic dominion is ending. The age of galactic diversity has begun. As the holograms faded and the Council delegation prepared to return to their ships, High Counselor Zeth Kara realized that they were no longer the masters of galactic destiny. They were witnesses to its transformation into something they had never imagined possible. And humanity was just getting started. 2 years had passed since humanity's quiet exodus from Council space, and High Counselor Zeth Kara barely recognized the galaxy he had once ruled with absolute authority. Standing in the observation deck of his flagship as it approached the neutral zone that now separated Council territory from the rapidly expanding Free Worlds Alliance, he contemplated the most profound transformation in galactic history. The star map displayed before him told a story of unprecedented change. What had begun as humanity's simple departure from the Sol system had evolved into a galaxy-spanning revolution that challenged every assumption about civilization, authority, and the nature of intelligence itself. Nearly 200 star systems had declared independence from Council oversight, and more were joining the Free Worlds Alliance every month. Dr. Elunara appeared beside him, her crystalline features reflecting the strange lights emanating from the border regions where reality itself seemed to be transforming. Under the influence of technologies the Council barely understood. High Counselor, our latest intelligence reports confirm what we've suspected for months. The free worlds aren't just sharing technology. They're sharing consciousness. Explain, Zeth Kara said, though he wasn't sure he wanted to understand what was happening beyond the border of his shrinking domain. The quantum communication networks that connect free world systems aren't just carrying information. They're creating a form of collective intelligence that allows billions of minds from dozens of species to work together on problems that no single civilization could solve alone. They're not becoming a hive mind, but rather a symphony of consciousness that retains individual identity while achieving collective capability. The implications were staggering. The Council had spent millennia perfecting systems of centralized command and control, believing that coordination required hierarchy and authority. But the free worlds had discovered something far more powerful: voluntary cooperation enhanced by shared consciousness and unlimited technological exchange. Ambassador Gent Keller's holographic form materialized on the observation deck, transmitting from his new position as the Council's liaison to the free worlds. His expression carried a mixture of awe and concern that had become familiar over the past 2 years. High Counselor, I've just returned from the Andromeda Conference, and what I witnessed there defies every model of galactic civilization we've ever conceived. The Andromeda Conference? A gathering of free world representatives to discuss their next phase of expansion. High Counselor, they're not content to simply transform this galaxy. They're preparing to spread their model of cooperative civilization to other galaxies entirely. Zeth Kara felt a chill of understanding. Are you saying they're planning to leave this galaxy? Not leave, expand. They've developed technologies that make intergalactic travel as routine as interstellar flight was for us a millennium ago. But more importantly, they're doing it not as conquerors or explorers, but as gardeners. Gardeners? Dr. Elu Nara accessed the latest intelligence data and projected it into the shared display space. High Counselor, the free worlds have begun what they call cultivation projects in nearby galaxies. Instead of establishing colonies or claiming territory, they're making contact with primitive civilizations and offering them the same gift they received from humanity: the knowledge and technology to transcend their limitations and join a larger community of conscious beings. The scope of this vision was beyond anything the Council had ever contemplated. While they had spent 3,000 years maintaining order within a single galaxy, humanity and their allies were preparing to nurture the development of consciousness and civilization across multiple galaxies simultaneously. Admiral Kothvar's image appeared via quantum communication from his position at the edge of Council space. His voice carried the weariness of a military leader who had come to understand that his enemy was not an enemy at all, but rather an entirely different form of existence. Councillors, I've been monitoring free world activities along our border for 18 months, and I can confirm that they pose no military threat to our territories.
No threat.
Chancellor Drakheim's voice crackled with frustration from his own distant position. They've stolen 200 star systems from us.
They haven't stolen anything, Counselor.
Every system that joined the free worlds did so voluntarily after their populations were given access to technologies and opportunities that we couldn't match. We lost those worlds not to conquest, but to obsolescence. The harsh truth of this statement silenced the communication channel. The Council's greatest fear had never been military defeat or political revolution. It had been irrelevance, and that fear was now becoming reality throughout their domain. Secretary General Santos materialized via hologram, her presence now carrying the weight of someone who spoke for billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. But her expression remained kind, almost sympathetic, as she addressed the Council leadership. High Counselor Zeth Kara, I want to thank you for accepting our invitation to this final diplomatic exchange. Final? Zeth Kara asked, though he suspected he knew what was coming. The Free Worlds Alliance has voted to formally withdraw all recognition of Council authority outside of your remaining member systems. We will no longer participate in any diplomatic protocols that assume the Council's right to regulate galactic affairs beyond your own territories. Ambassador Jenth Kala leaned forward intently. Secretary General, are you saying that the free worlds are declaring the Council irrelevant to galactic civilization? I'm saying that galactic civilization has evolved beyond the need for centralized authority. The Council represents one approach to organizing intelligent life, and it's an approach that works well for the species that choose it. But it's no longer the dominant or default approach. Ilunara had been analyzing data streams throughout this conversation, and her next words confirmed the Council's deepest fears. Secretary General, our sensors are detecting massive construction projects throughout free world space. What are you building? Santos smiled with the expression of someone sharing wonderful news. We're building gateways, Doctor. Iluinara. Permanent portals that will connect our galaxy to dozens of others, allowing consciousness and knowledge to flow freely across distances that were previously impossible to traverse. Gateways to other galaxies? Zeth Kara struggled to comprehend the scope of such an undertaking. The energy requirements alone would be staggering. Only if you're thinking in terms of individual civilizations working separately, Santos replied. When hundreds of worlds pool their knowledge and resources, when billions of minds cooperate on solving technological challenges, when the barriers between species and systems disappear, projects that seem impossible become merely difficult. The holographic display around them suddenly filled with new images transmitted by the free worlds. Massive ring-like structures surrounding entire stars, their surfaces gleaming with technologies that bent space and time like clay, in the hands of cosmic artisans. These were not just gateways but monuments to a form of civilization that had transcended every limitation the Council had believed were permanent features of reality. Admiral Kothvar's military training allowed him to recognize the strategic implications immediately. Secretary General, you're not just creating a galactic alliance, you're creating an intergalactic network of conscious civilizations. The scope of such a project is beyond anything in recorded history. Beyond anything in your recorded history, Santos corrected gently. Admiral, humanity spent centuries studying the patterns of galactic development before we chose our path. We discovered that consciousness has been emerging and connecting across the universe for billions of years. The Council's mistake was believing that you were the pinnacle of that development rather than simply one stage in an ongoing evolution. Councillor Merethes spoke with a voice that carried the weight of dawning understanding. You're saying that the Free Worlds Alliance is not a political movement or a technological revolution. It's part of a cosmic process that's been ongoing since the beginning of intelligent life. Now you're beginning to understand, Santos replied. Humanity didn't create this process. We simply recognized it and chose to participate consciously rather than resist it unconsciously. The implications of this revelation transformed the entire nature of the conversation. The Council had been thinking in terms of political and military competition, but they were actually witnessing something far more profound, the emergence of a new phase of cosmic evolution that made their traditional concerns seem as limited as the territorial disputes of primitive tribes. Doctor. Eleonara looked up from her instruments with an expression of scientific wonder mixed with existential awe. Secretary General, if what you're describing is accurate, then consciousness itself is evolving towards some form of universal integration. What happens to individual identity in such a system? Individual identity becomes more precious, not less, Santos replied. When consciousness can share experiences and knowledge freely, when the boundaries between minds become permeable by choice rather than barrier by default, individual perspectives and unique insights become the most valuable resources in the universe. Diversity of thought and experience drives the evolution of consciousness itself. High Councillor Zethkara felt the weight of 3,000 years of galactic tradition and authority settling on his shoulders like a burial shroud. Everything the Council had built, everything they had achieved, was being rendered obsolete not by conquest or destruction but by transcendence. Secretary General, he said quietly, what becomes of the Council? What becomes of the civilizations that choose not to join your alliance? Santos's expression showed genuine compassion. High Councillor, nothing becomes of you that you don't choose for yourselves. The free worlds will not interfere with Council territory or attempt to force your member species to change their approach to civilization. You are welcome to continue governing your domain according to your established principles. But we will be isolated, Zethkara stated. Cut off from the larger currents of galactic development. You will be as isolated or as connected as you choose to be. The gateways we're building will remain open to any consciousness that wishes to explore beyond the boundaries of individual galaxies, but no one will be compelled to use them. Ambassador Jenth Keller asked the question that haunted every council leader. Secretary General, are you offering us the opportunity to join the Free Worlds Alliance? Ambassador, the Free Worlds Alliance doesn't exist in the way you understand alliances. There are no membership requirements, no central authority, no governing structure that species must submit to. There are only opportunities to share consciousness, knowledge, and resources with other forms of intelligent life that have chosen cooperation over competition. The conversation continued for several more hours, but the fundamental transformation was already complete. The galaxy was no longer divided between Council space and free world territory. It was divided between consciousness that clung to familiar limitations and consciousness that had chosen to evolve beyond them. As the diplomatic session concluded and the various participants began to disconnect from the quantum communication network, High Councillor Zethkara found himself alone with Dr. Elunara on the observation deck of his flagship. Doctor, he said quietly, in your scientific opinion, what are we witnessing? Dr. Elunara was silent for a long moment, her crystalline features reflecting the strange lights that emanated from free world space. High Councillor, I believe we're witnessing the end of civilization as we've understood it and the beginning of something that our language doesn't yet have words to describe. Humanity didn't just leave Council space. They became the catalyst for a transformation that was always possible but never attempted. And the Council? The Council can remain as we are, governing our member worlds according to principles that have served us well for 3 millennia. Or we can choose to evolve alongside the rest of the galaxy. But High Councillor, I don't think we can remain unchanged while the universe around us transforms into something magnificent. Zeth Kara nodded slowly, understanding that the choice facing the Council was not between victory and defeat, but between stagnation and growth, between isolation and integration, between the familiar comfort of authority and the unknown promise of consciousness itself evolving towards something greater than any single species could achieve alone. In the end, humanity's gift to the galaxy had not been rebellion or revolution. It had been possibility. And as the stars themselves began to change around them, reflecting the influence of technologies and consciousness that operated beyond the boundaries of individual worlds or galaxies, the Council faced the most important decision in their 3,000-year history, whether to remain guardians of the past or become participants in a future that exceeded their wildest dreams. The choice, like everything else in the transformed galaxy, was theirs to make.